Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I'm Barry Rowland. In this episode, we'll be reviewing the DOF Reality H6 motion platform, a true 6DOF motion experience for only $3,800 plus shipping. Time to put it through the SRG's review process and see how they are able to do this. So, let's get to it. I'm going to give you a quick closer look at this motor, and this is actually not the one that we're going to be using on my H6 review. We've got some upgraded motors and different ratios, gear ratios in our gearboxes here. So I'm just showing you this one because it's one of the old ones, and it's just easier to show you because I got the others mounted all together and they're heavy to lift. So anyway, the basic concept is the same here. Nothing's changed as far as that goes. So we have your electric motor. We have it driving in a gearbox here, right? And that gearbox obviously is going to drive our lever. And because this is just a motor, there's no encoder on it, there's no resolver or any of that stuff for communicating back to the controller board. We have a rotary resistor here. This is kind of an industrial unit, and it's coupled to the shaft, the other end of this shaft, so that when this shaft gets turned, then this will report the position back to the controller board, and that's how we control it, instead of having, again, an encoder or resolver stacked on the back here like you do on a servo motor setup. Right, so it's pretty simple what we're looking at here. The plugs here, we have a 3-prong here for power, so that's how we're going to control the motor with the power, and based on what we're getting as far as position sensing off this data cable. And that will go into the controller box too. We'll see that once we get there. So again, there's not a lot I can show you like this, with it all together. So what I've decided to do, and I didn't do it when I did the H2 or the H3 review, and I'm going to do it for this one. That is pull this assembly apart and show you, at least as much apart as I need to show you how all this works and how it's put together. So let's take a look inside of this assembly that allows us to create motion for our rig. First off, I'm going to pull the motor off. A heavy little unit here. Now remember, this is a 3,000 RPM motor, but the newer motors are 1,500, right? So we have a flange here that has the 4-bolt holes that obviously let us attach it to this adapter. And also you can see that there's the shaft in the middle. We have a sealed bearing in there. Shield, actually, it's a shielded bearing, not sealed. Shield's got the metal part. Alright, you can see on the shaft we have a key. This way, you can see it better. I guess not sure. There we go. Alright, so there's a little groove cut into or machined into this shaft, and then they press this key in there. So we call that piece of metal the key. So that indexes into the hollow part of our shaft in here, so that we're able to do some work with this motor, and that is turn the shaft that's in here. The hollowed out shaft, there's the little slot for the keyway, and it just inserts in there and then turns. Very simple, right? Typical, you see this a lot with the motors, electric motors that do any work in machinery. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull this adapter plate off, and you can see this is actually a nice aluminum bit. You see how it's been machined out there, grooves, and got some weight out of it. And it has obviously 4 holes on the outside and 4 on the inside in a smaller diameter. The 4 holes on the outside, of course, are for the flange on our electric motor again, right? The 4 on the interior diameter are so that they fit our gearbox. Right there, there's 4 there. And you can see the bearings right there. We'll see more of that though. That this is actually supporting our shaft here. Alright, now there's a seal in here, again, because of the transmission fluid that's in this stuff. Yeah, you can see it's wet because of the transmission fluid, and this is what it looks like. It's brown. Kind of a reddish brown. Typically what you'll see in a gearbox. And this is a pretty good seal, actually. Look at it here, bright light. You can see it has a little cavity in between the 2 steel lips. Flip it around that way, you can see the same thing. No spring in here to reinforce it, but yeah, this seal is just like any other seal I see in, I used to build motors and stuff, like everybody else, right? And yeah, it's very similar to that stuff. Very good seal. It doesn't leak, so it's got to be good. And we can see there's actually some sealant around this. You can see that white stuff there, on the edges there. Yeah, it's got some sealant on it. It fits down inside here and it goes on. Right. Over there. And I'm making a mess because the seal is wet. And stuff always, you never get all the transmission fluid or oil out of this thing. it seems. Okay, so because we don't have encoder resolver, we obviously are going to use this potentiometer here to sense what position this lever is in from where it's been turned, right? So we know how to control, or we let the controller board and the driver control this locator as far as the location of our lever here. Right, so I'm going to pull this off. And these are the two bolts that hold it on, just keep it from moving in and out and stabilize it while it's under use. And these are M6 bolts. Pull that out. And they're 55 millimeters long. They're pretty long. Put it over here. And let me pull this one out. And then we'll have it loose as far as the potentiometer goes. Not all the way loose because it's attached to this coupler. See how I can actually turn this coupler and it doesn't move. The potentiometer doesn't. Alright, so because the potentiometer obviously has its own shaft in there, it's moving. I'm going to pull this out. Coupler. There we go. Set this back down. And show you, it's typical of any potentiometer, or most of them anyway. It has that flat spot on it. See the little flat spot there, so that we can tighten one of these bolts down on it and hold it so it doesn't move. It is very easy to move, by the way. Yeah, pretty easy. But not a lot of slop in it as far as in and out. There's a little bit of lash, but there has to be some, obviously, or it won't turn. So yeah, seems like a pretty good one. Let's go ahead and take a look at the model number if you guys are interested in that kind of thing. There it is. Made in Mexico. Alright, so we know what that does and how it's coupled. Let's look at the coupler itself. See if I can get this off. Screw here. There we go. Alright, and of course, this is the other side of the shaft that goes all the way through this gearbox and turns the lever. Alright, this is a cool coupler. It's aluminum. We have a larger hole on one side than the other. And of course, that's because we have a smaller piece here that's coming out the other side of the shaft, right? Then, of course, the shaft that's in the potentiometer. Right, all custom stuff. And you can see there's some grooves cut in the middle of it, right? There's grooves. And you can actually take this and squish it. Yeah, they open up. Or they close down, depending on which way you're looking at it. So that's kind of a dampening deal. Alright, so it's not a stiff connection between the shaft and the potentiometer shaft, because that might cause vibrations and throw some readings off. So yeah, this is pretty cool the way to do this. Again, it's all aluminum, and they take it, there it is. See how the first line starts on the top? And then you can see all the way at the bottom, it ends. So that's how they do this, to keep this as one piece, but still give it that springy capacity, right? Make it go from that. And of course, a little bit this way you can turn it. Rotation this way, and of course more type of rotation. So a very cool little unit here. Again, all this is pretty nice looking kit. No junky stuff here, really. Everything's just doing its job. Now, what are we going to look at next? Okay, so the shaft just comes out. Let me show you that real quick, I guess. Alright, and it has its own keyways and keys in it. The two main ones here. And we also have a key on here. If this lever here is pressed onto the shaft with that key. So everything turns something. And I was going to pull this off, but it was pretty stiff, and I didn't feel like pressing it off. You guys get the idea, right? Alright, I'm going to put that back in. Because, before I do that, let me just show you how that shaft is. A hollowed out shaft. The key goes all the way through this. So, yeah, there it is. There's the other end of it. It's not like sure. Anyway. So it's pretty simple. It's just a shaft. And this shaft either has a gear bolted to it, or it might be a one-piece machine, but there's a gear going around this that engages the gear that's on this shaft. I'm going to put this back in and show you what I mean by that. Now, this is a 50-to-1 gear ratio on here. Sometimes you got to put it back in the same way it came out. I can put it on this side. Well, it just doesn't want to go back in. Yeah, there you go. All right. I just know that because I've worked on a lot of stuff. Alright, so let's take a look at this worm gear. First, if we turn this, one thing you want to know, that the gear ratio 1 to 50, which means this is that's about straight up right there, and I'm looking where the keyway is, this location. And 1 to 50 means if I turn this 50 times, completely around 50 times, this should move all the way around one rotation. So as an experiment, I'm going to rotate it 10 times and see how far it goes. Right about there. Alright, so you can see it didn't go a full quarter turn. So I would say that's about a fifth. Okay? So yeah, this is definitely a 1 to 50 ratio on this. And that's how that works. If I turn another 40 times, it'll go all the way around. But we're not going to do that. Because we just want to get the idea here. Now I'm going to take this drain plug off. And that's what this little plug here is, or fill plug or whatever. And we're going to be able to see, without me having to press all these bearings out and everything, how this really works. Alright, if you look down in there, you can see some grooves. And that's, of course, on this shaft to get down. And this, we call this a worm gear, right? Because it kind of moves up and down as you turn it. I'm going to turn this, and you can see the gears moving. See how it goes either up. Right now it's going down because of the rotation I'm putting on it. If I turn it the other way, they go up. And of course, you can see my levers turning based on what I'm doing here. Alright, pretty cool, huh? So that's how it works. Pretty simple stuff. So yeah, now that I know how all this works and goes together, I have a better idea what's going on with the mechanics of my motion, and that helps me maybe understand some other things that I may not once I get to actually using this system. So yep, there we have it. Get this transmission fluid off to me, and yeah, there it is. Look inside. Now that we've taken a closer look and a look inside on this motor gearbox assembly, on how each one of these is assembled and how it works, now we can mount them to our bars here that are going to interface with our hexagon frame that's going to position everything where it needs to be and sits on the floor. And we'll look at that in just a minute. These bars are kind of a rectangular shape, as you can see. All right, we've got 2 holes in them. Let's get my cable out of the way here. We've got a hole here, and we have a hole here. Now we also have holes on the bottom of these. I'm going to very carefully turn this up over here and over here, and that's for these feet. So you get 6 of these feet. They're going to screw right into those holes. These are M10 threaded feet, and they're adjustable. They have this nut on them, and of course once we screw it in, I usually use the nut, leave the nut rather all the way down, and then once I screw it into where I need it to be level, then I'll screw the nut up, and that will lock it, so it'll be nice and level on my floor. And we also have I'm not sure the size of this. It looks like to be about a 20, maybe 22 millimeter hex on this, so we can actually turn this with a wrench if we got to do some fine-tuning adjustment, and we can't do it with our fingers. So we get 6 of these, and we'll be putting them on the bottom, as you saw there. Now these 2 holes here are going to interface with the, like I said before, the hexagon frame. And I'm going to show you a quick shot of it here, and yeah, pretty simple stuff. What we're going to be using is these 75 millimeter M8 bolts, and you can see they have the long solid shank and then threads at the end. Of course, the solid shank part is what's going to be inside of here. So yeah, it won't be resting or sitting on the threads, it'll be sitting on the shank part. Very cool. I like the way when they do bolts this way. This is an M6 metric on the top. Simple enough. And again, we have 1 washer and 1 nylock nut, and you can see it's got that blue stuff in there, blue plastic that will, or this might even be black,